This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Get 2 times membership rewards points per dollar on eligible purchases in key business categories, as well as on each eligible purchase of $5,000 or more, on up to $2 million in eligible purchases per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hi everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. Today I am reporting from the Pordenone Silent Film Festival, Le Giornate del Cinema Muto. It is a wonderful festival that has been running for decades now, celebrating all the wonders of silent film, with every film accompanied by live music performed by some of the most talented musicians in the field. Today I'm going to be talking to James Harrison, who is a huge fan of silent film. He's also an organiser of a festival of his own, Southwestern Silence, and Film Noir, which are both based in Bristol. So they're both worth, we'll talk about them and he will explain them much more clearly than I can. After which, and our conversation just went on and became a podcast, as you will hear during the podcast. It was something we sort of mutually agreed upon during the conversation, so it was a real pleasure to talk to Neil. Neil, of course, should be familiar to any fans of film music. He's been involved in documentaries and films on Radio 4, on the BBC generally. He is an expert accompanist of film music. He's an expert on film music in general, and he is a wonderful, interesting, generous man as well. So it was a real pleasure to get to know him in the flesh, because I'd sort of been communicating with him on and off through social media, and that's why social media is, at its best, can do this kind of thing. But this was Pordenone gave me the opportunity to properly cross paths, and it was wonderful. I was really, really pleased to have that opportunity. Hopefully it will occur many times in the future. Pordenone has become, certainly for me, it's not very far from where I live. It's about an hour's drive away, so I was able to spend a few days there, watch some great cinema. One highlight of which, by the way, was Max Fleischer's early animations, in which he appears Tony Hart-like with his own animations, and in some of the most remarkable and surprising comedy animation that I've seen, certainly from that era. But to tell you the truth, it was fresh as any animation you would expect to see today. Wonderful. Also, Max Fleischer was the father of Richard Fleischer, who was the director of such films as Soylent Green and Fantastic Voyage, The Vikings, Dr. Dolittle, Tora Tora Tora, Conan the Destroyer, Red Sonja. People often criticise Richard Fleischer, but it's got a heck of a filmography, actually. Anyway, it was really good to talk to Neil and James. I really appreciate them taking the time to talk to me, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. A little bit different this week, so enjoy the conversation.
Hello everybody and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I am a writer and filmmaker, and today I am in an amazing place, Pordenone, which is only about an hour away from where I live, and I am attending Le Giornate del Cinema Muto, which is, I guess you would translate it as the days of silent cinema. And I'm here this is my first time, but I'm here with a veteran of the festival, James Harrison. Thank you for joining me, James.
No, thanks, John. This is rather exciting. I've been listening to your podcast for years, so and yet I'm not a writer. So in so many ways, am I the first non-writer to be on Writers on Film?
No, I've had a few. I'm one of the benefits of being of not having anyone do the podcast but me is I can bend the rules. Yeah. No one will tell me off.
All right. Well, no, I'm not a published writer, but I write. So there you go.
There are plenty of people who do that. Bill Gerberi, who has been on the podcast several times, has never written a book, and he always says, why do you have me on the podcast? And it's because, well, I like your writing.
Yeah. Well, look, it's great to have you here, and I know on and off I've been hassling you to come here. So it's great to be here and to sit down with you and have a drink. And,
absolutely. And let's talk about, first of all, you are interested in silent cinema. You're interested in film noir. Let's talk a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
So I'm based in Bristol, and Bristol is very much a mecca for cinephiles. It's I think every week there's some sort of film festival going on of sorts, or some sort of festival anyway. And Bristol's, I run an organisation called Southwest Silence, and we're dedicated to screening classic silent films with live music and brand new restorations in and around the Bristol area. So I always come to Pordenone. This is almost my 20th year, and every year I kind of keep an eye out for anything which we would like to screen, and we usually do. I usually pick up 2 or 3 films, and if it isn't for me, then it's usually for the Slapstick Silent Comedy Film Festival in Bristol as well, or Cinema Rediscovered, which is almost the equivalent of Bologna but in Bristol. So I kind of keep an eye out for any of those kind of films over here as well. So I've kind of got my silent film hat on most of the time, but then I also got my film noir hat on because I co-run a film organisation as well called Film Noir UK, and it's the same as what we do with the silent films, is that we screen the brand new restorations of film noir films and then screen them for audiences in the cinema. And bizarrely, there are some sort of connections with the silent film era and film noir, so it all comes around in the end. You've got Fritz Lang, you've got the cinematographers who end up working in it, all kinds of things. So it kind of works in a way. And there was a film last year at the Giornate which was called Forgotten Faces from 1928, Paramount film, and that had elements of film noir in it. You had the certain look, plus you had a very young William Powell in it. So it's a great film, and we're screening that this year at Film Noir Fest, which is our film festival in Weston-super-Mare at the beginning of November. So.
And Noirvember is almost upon us. We're at the beginning of October now.
Yeah. And it's Film Noir Fest that kicks off on the 31st of October, so Halloween, and then we run all the way through from to the Sunday evening, basically. So 31st to the 2nd of November.
And where does that take place?
So that's in the Plaza Cinema, which is used to be an Odeon up until recently. It's the Plaza Cinema in the centre of Weston, and it's a 4-screen cinema. It's now run by a small multiplex company called Merlin Cinemas, and we just take over the 2 big. They've given us the 2 big cinemas, 2 big screens, this year. So we've got plenty of space. So do come along if you can.
Excellent. Well, that's brilliant. That sounds like a dream. I'd have noir is definitely something that has obsessed me since I began liking cinema. I think
it's a weird thing because it has got, going back to that silent film theory I mentioned about that silent film employs itself into film noir, and I think because both film noir and silent film are obviously visual aspects of cinema. All cinema is visual anyway, but the look of it and everything just comes out of silent cinema particularly. I think that's the nice connection with it, is that I think anyone who likes cinema half the time is that it's because they love the visuals of certain aspects, like silent film or film noir. I'm babbling a little bit, but there you go.
No, I totally get that. There's a certain stylization and heightenedness about both, which you don't necessarily get in all cinema. Or I remember once listening to Peter Jackson talking about why The Hobbit and his frame rates were so impressive. And he said, "Oh, it's like you're not in a cinema. It's like you've just opened the back of the cinema up and you can see into, Bilbo's room." And I was thinking that's entirely the wrong conceptualization of what cinema should be. I don't want to look into anyone's room. I want it to be on a screen. That's the point. I want to have lighting and shadow and dark and light used in an interesting way. Let's talk a little bit about the giornate del cinema muto. I'm absolutely impressed, first of all, by the audiences, because you have this rich collection of people who are there are punters, there are enthusiasts, definitely. There are patrons who come every year and support the festival. And there are archivists, and there are people who, like yourself, who are programmers and curators. It just seems like a really rich and very knowledgeable audience.
To be honest with you, I've been coming, like I said, for nearly 20 years. And it's very much more of a family, really, more than anything else now, because, I've been coming here, like I said, and I grow old with all these people, and every year we kind of come together, and there's people from Australia here who I would never in any way usually meet up with, because I wouldn't have met them because I've never been to Australia, but they come here every year, and I go out and have dinner with them, and then we watch a film, and it is a very, very variety of people. You've also got filmmakers, so on occasions I've been here when Michael York's been here because he's been doing narrated a documentary.
We had Ludovico Einaudi's here today, the musician who Neil Brand is here, who people will know from the radio. I think you've worked with him quite a lot in the past.
So my actual paying job is working for the BBC. So I used to make a lot of doc series for BBC 4. And I worked with Neil, on quite a few of those over the years. But I knew Neil way before doing those. It was just totally by chance that we found this rather unique presentation, which Neil is amazing at, which is just dissecting music, film music, and able to bring something out of it. There's also who else did we have here? We had who directed The Three Amigos and.
Oh, John Landis?
Yeah, so John Landis has been here a couple of times because he's a big silent film fan. There's been a couple of others, but that's the only one I can think of. But it's a wonderful, varied selection. There's academics, there's film critics, there's historians, there's dentists. If you ever need a dentist, there's at least 3 dentists I know who come out here every year.
That is very useful to know, actually. I did have a dental emergency at Cannes once, and I wish I'd known a dentist then. But the French dental situation was excellent, I have to say. Hats off to the French. An appointment the same day, and it cost me €15. So, that's a little...
Yeah, that's a lot better than the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very few places would have dealt with it with such alacrity. So, back to the films.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like we've diverged a little bit there.
I'm classic. I'm known for going down a different route all the time. So just try and keep up with me on that one. But
no worries. Well, we talked about Neil earlier, and of course, one of the reasons Neil is here is because of there is live accompaniment with every film, and some of these accompanists, we had a Japanese, I think there was a couple of Japanese musicians who were playing multiple instruments. Last night there were like 3 or 4 different instruments being played, not just piano, not just the classical sort of thing that comes to mind when you think of a Charlie Chaplin comedy. You get a swathe of different music, some of which is improvised as they're watching the film, some of which is scored specifically for certain films or rescored. So that's a fascinating aspect as well of this.
Yeah, the music is it's the extra part to the to silent film anyway. But the musicians are the best in the world. I'm lucky enough to work with a good chunk of them when we're doing events in the UK. So Stephen Horn, who's excellent. Stephen's going to be doing a couple of things, and I know for a fact he constantly changes. He's playing the violin at one point, then he changes back to the piano. He can bang a drum while playing the piano at the same time, or play a banjo, or God knows what. So there's that. There's also Meg Morley, who's excellent, who's Australian, and she's someone which we work with a lot, and she's really amazing, really, really good. And we've got John Sweeney, who's just sitting over there, and John is New Zealand, but now based in the UK. And what's interesting is that they all have their specialities. So Stephen, I would say, I would never really employ Stephen to do a Douglas Fairbanks film. That would be someone like Meg or Neil Brand. But if I wanted someone to do a Russian film, a montage, with Russian montage or anything, you get John Sweeney in, because John is specifically very good at the movement of people with the piano. It sounds a bit odd, but when you see it, you see it.
I've noticed it. There's definitely a type of music accompaniment which goes with montage, just quick cutting and changing from one scene to another and back again. That intercutting, which you sort of, from a score perspective, you have to keep 2 or 3 leitmotifs alive at the same time and switch between them and seamlessly.
But also, Neil, I know for a fact, will keep a certain theme running, for almost like the John Williams style of having a particular theme for a character, and he might not play that again for quite some time, but he will bring it slightly back into something if he wanted to. But half the time, like you said, these guys haven't even seen the film, so they need to improvise there and then, and it's amazing. And usually my feeling is that's the best you get, is when they're improvising, because you give them too much time to just think up something. It kind of gets a bit complicated with the music if they know what's coming up already.
Yeah, it's almost like if they it gives you the concept of having a mistake comes in. Yeah. Whereas if it's like a jazz improvisation, if there's a jazz improvisation, you can't really make a mistake, because the mistake becomes part of the moment. Talking about the different styles that we've been watching this week at Pordenone, I also wanted to stress this, that we have in front of us a absolutely broad chronological and generic and geographical range. We've got, I've already mentioned Japanese paper films. We've got Ukrainian children's pictures from the Soviet era. We've got Italian travelogues. We've got early slapstick, which has been there's a whole stream of stuff which has been influenced by Charlie Chaplin. We've also got lots of clips of Charlie Chaplin behind the scenes and making films of himself in his studio, which he was very proud of, and he wanted to show off. And he also wanted to show off how he's not the character of Charlotte. He's really, there's the actor and there's the performance. The lady doth protest too much sometimes, I think, on that one, but there we go. And we've got films that are classics, like we just mentioned the Fritz Lang. Help me with the title. It's Tod in German, isn't it?
Yeah, Icon.
Destiny?
Yeah, Destiny. In the UK it's known as Destiny, and it's available on Master Cinema over there. So I put my hands up. I didn't actually go and see it because I've seen it too often. And we've programmed it a number of times, so I was like, yeah, I'll skip this one. But there's always something there. I mean, to be honest with you, just once again, I put my hands up, I've hardly seen any of the Chaplin-related stuff, just because the whole movie stuff at the studio and everything I have seen before. I've actually used it in a TV series as well. So that kind of stuff I'm not remotely interested in, but that's just me, because there'll be someone else here who has never seen it before in their lives, and that's the great aspect, is that you get...
That's me!
Yeah. But what I'm looking out for is just the oddities or the little gems which kind of been forgotten about a little bit. So Forgotten Faces was a classic one from last year, which we're doing. This year I thought the Blood Ship, which we watched this morning.
Yeah,
with Hobart Bosworth in it, I think, who is, I think, one of these stars who should really be re-examined. He was in this film called Beyond the Door, I think, or Behind the Door, a couple of years ago, and that's an absolute masterpiece of really horrific. It's a rather brutal film, and so is The Bloodship a little bit. He has this violent face, which kind of freaks me out every time. But he's a fascinating character to look at.
I saw The Bloodship this morning. I was really struck by it. It does live up to its name.
Yeah.
There's a lot of violence in it.
Yeah.
It's brutal. It's about a ship which the captain is a Captain Bligh kind of character who is so brutal that his crew constantly jump ship when he gets to port, and he sort of says, well, that way I don't have to pay them off, and then he shanghais another bunch of people. And there's a whole ton of subplots in there, some very interesting comedy going on. There's a black character who I think when we're watching these films taken from a certain era, there are obvious attitudes which have changed, but I also think, rather than the knee-jerk of just like, oh, God, weren't they racist then? There are also things like this particular black character where I actually found a lot of his comedy quite subversive.
Yeah.
And quite... you would see this in maybe not today, but you'd certainly see it in a 1980s sidekick role.
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, the one thing is that we always have to take everything with a pinch of salt, because obviously these are films which are nearly 100 years old, so it's that different aspect. There has been films I have seen at the Giannati over the years where it's all out full on racism in it. There was one particular film a couple of years ago where basically no one was really warned, and I don't think there was any mention of it in the screen notes, and it was just like full on. Like, everyone was just like, what the hell is this, without just telling anyone. But anyway, apart from that, usually it's pretty easy going. But no, The Bloodship was great, I thought, and I agree with you, it was totally brutal throughout. And do see Behind the Door if you can, because that's available on Flickr Alley, I think, and that's really brutal. That's even more brutal, and he's terrifying in it.
Right.
The Hobart character.
So he's the guy playing the captain?
No,
he's a guy playing the antagonist to the captain.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So the goodie. I'm saying antagonist, but really the captain's the antagonist.
The good guy, but in so many ways you look at him, you think this guy can't be a good guy. He's just too terrifying. But anyway.
He's got this amazing glare.
Yeah. It's those eyes. It's just like they absolutely pierce straight through the screen to you. It's seriously, do check out the Behind the Door. It's Beyond the Door, Behind the Door. Let's go with Behind the Door. But that's an amazing film, and that is really brutal. Yeah, absolutely. And have there been any other... Actually, just before I mention the other highlights, talking about that idea of there being racism and everything, I think one of the things that's interesting about silent film is that half of silent film does coincide with the rise of fascism in Europe, and not only Europe, also in Japan. So you do get propaganda, you do get there's a series of home movies that are being shown here, and there's an Italian one where it's a bunch of kids basically playing around, and it's very innocent and bucolic, and then 10 minutes in they all walk past the camera doing the fascist salute. Yeah. And I loved the fact that this was accompanied by, I don't know exactly the name of the musician, so I can't credit them, but they played Giovinezza, the fascist song, 5 minutes before that happened. So I was thinking, hang on a minute, and it was foreshadowed. It was perfect. Yeah, the politics do come into it, and over the years we've had Soviet cinema, basically full-blown propaganda films, which are always interesting to see. I know one friend of mine who basically just can't stand them and walks out every time he sees one of them. But it's just an interesting take of where it's all going. And in regards to the home movies, the Italian ones this year, clearly, and there is that feeling when you watch them. It's just like, well, which one of these are fascists in so many ways? And there's I think there was a scene on a cruise ship at one point, and I was thinking, which one of these are, because I think that was I think one of the home movies was from 1933, so we're not that far away from World War II already. And
fascism has already been in place for some time.
Exactly, yeah. So it's an interesting take. But that's how it works sometimes, is that we are going to be able to see these type of films.
It's a little bit like The White Ribbon, the Michael Haneke film, where you're watching something and you're thinking, these are the kids who are going to grow up to be the soldiers. Yeah. But with the Italian one, they're also the kids who are going to grow up to be the partisans.
Yep.
So, half of them are going to be partisans, if not more, despite this indoctrination, and maybe because of it, because indoctrination often has the opposite effect to the one it's. The other person I'd love to mention is David Fleischer, who is it's Max Fleischer is the animator. Yeah. Now, this guy's a discovery for me. I'd never come across this guy before. I'm sure people are probably screaming at me, because this is hugely ignorant. But this guy basically does, kind of a Who Framed Roger Rabbit, avant lit, and does this amazing thing of putting himself in all these cartoons where he's constantly, or for our UK listeners, it's sort of Morph and Tony Hart. Yeah. And he's always getting into trouble with his animated clown. I just love these. I just think they're so inventive and funny and, just joyous.
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, I'm like you. I was totally ignorant about... I recognise the character, the clown character, which Max Fleischer draws, but... I was just going through the notes because my understanding is his granddaughter is going to be here at some point because she's written a book about Max Fleischer. And of course, Max Fleischer's son turned out to be Richard Fleischer, the film director. So there's a lot of hints of film noir there already seen. But so apparently she's coming along, but I haven't actually seen her yet. But it'll be interesting to see what her new book is about and see what the rest of the collection, the rest of these restorations are like, because they're great fun. They are really good fun.
And I noticed there's a website that you can go to, which I think is just maxfleischer.com. And I'm sure you can find some examples of his work there. I would definitely tell everyone to do that, because this guy is really way before his time. His technique, it just looks so modern, just looks so brilliant, and the actual visual humour that he has is way beyond anything I was expecting.
Well, I think there's hints of almost Keaton-esque approaches to cinema, of like the fact that the animator Max Fleischer ends up in the film as a cardboard cutout or whatever, or drawing of himself, and he's animated himself in with his characters. So there is that taking it further than the fourth wall. So it's an interesting selection of films. So
amazing. Is there anything else you got to look forward to?
A lot.
Yeah, but I was going to say that sounded like
there's a lot going on. There is one thing which. It's to be honest with you, it's more the travelogues. I love travelogues, and I don't know why, but it's something which I've always just been taking an interest in. It's just a good chunk of my mates basically say, "Oh God, Harrison's gone into non-fiction mode again." But I just kind of like. There was a wonderful series last year on Sicily, from like 1903 up until 1912, and just seeing Sicily then. Was absolutely amazing. It's the same with this year, where they've got a selection of Italian films around
it's kind of Liguria, Genova,
So,
Bay of Spezia.
So I just love watching those, really. And I don't really mind not watching any of the fiction films almost, because it's just this snapshot of a world which is totally gone now. But there's those, and there is something else, but I've forgotten already. The Bloodship was one of the key ones I definitely wanted to see. But no, there's so much. There is so much. I'm just going through the guide the timetable right now, and it's endless.
Yeah, it's really good. I do think that's another element that I love watching silent movies, because, as you say, it's an added value, if you like, that there's this other world out there, and you can sort of see, because of the international aspect, there's films from Brazil, there's films from Portugal and France and Spain, Italy, obviously we've already mentioned, Ukraine we mentioned, and you see how there's different acting, there's different behaviour. The Ukrainian children's film, there's like a Pippi Longstockings character in that, a male version, and it's just, you suddenly see, wow, there are some real similarities, and there are other things which are totally culturally specific, and that breadth is a world which comes alive with this kind of cinema, and it's something that I think people should open themselves to, because they would thoroughly enjoy it. I think there's a lot to be gained here, a lot to be delved into.
No, totally. I mean, the great thing is, unlike certain other film festivals where you're going to miss out on something because you go and see something else, the great thing is with the Giornate is just because it's one screen and that's it. And you can either dip in and watch it, or you can just sit outside, and we're in the cafe opposite the Cinema de Posta. And you can just sit here and have a chat with anyone from the festival. Really, everyone's so friendly and nice, and everything. It's just great. The one of the films, one I was trying to remember, was The Man Who Came Back, which is a George O'Brien film from 1924. That's another one which sounds interesting, but who knows? Excellent. It might be terrible.
Excellent. No, I'm sure it will be good. Final question then. Yeah. Recommended book.
Oh, on anything?
Recommended film book. No, okay. Anything to do with film.
Can I do two?
Go ahead.
Okay, one, it's the one which started me off on my silent film trip, was David Robinson's Chaplin, his life and work, I think, or the life and art. And David used to be the creative director of the Giornate for a good 20 years. And that was the book which started it all off for me. And I devoured that book, and then it sent me on a silent film spree. And then, of course, the classic Parade's Gone By Kevin Brownlow, which is a must-have for anyone, I think, not even just silent film fans, but just cinema fans, really.
And those are both writers that I should really pursue to see if I can get on. It's getting a bit late in the day for it, but I would love to have them both on. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, James.
No, it's great, John. Thank you, and thanks for allowing me on. This is probably the only time you're going to allow me out on any time. So
that's not true. Next year, at the very least, or maybe we could do a noir one, because I'd love to talk noir with you.
Yeah, well, let's do that, and I can definitely suggest a couple of extra film noir titles, books as well. So, but yeah.
So well, let's talk about what Paolo just mentioned, which was, because this is going to go out to a readership who don't know silent film. So, as an accompanist, you're improvising the score as you watch the film.
Yeah, and I have been since the start. My first film was probably early 80s. So I was invited to play for a film society. And I prepared quarter of an hour for Buster Keaton's Steamboat Bill Jr., which is an hour and 10, in the hope that somebody would take over. And I've always been able to play the piano by ear. And I grew up playing kind of pictures on the piano, pictures of stories and ideas, and loving film music, and music as narrative has always been my thing. So I fell into this job very easily and learnt my trade at the National Film Theatre, where more often than not you just sat straight down in front of the film when you started playing. So you learnt to read a film and react to it very, very quickly. Thanks to digital, we're now in a position to be able to see these films as screeners before we play them. And that's really only been the last 4 or 5 years. Before that, there was still a wonderful element of quite high adrenaline about sitting down in front of a movie, particularly a movie where you've got 2,000 people sitting in the cinema. But what tended to happen when it was good was that my enjoyment of that film then became musical and sounded terrific. I say this to people, they don't believe it, but it's true. I cannot remember a note I played after I finished playing.
Wow.
So when I'm watching a film and playing a film and it's a movie I've not seen before and it turns out to be a masterpiece, then I can produce a masterpiece of music. And I can't do it the next time I see it because it's not the first time anymore. So it's a very interesting place to be. It's quite close to acting in a way, because I'm coming up with the sort of character that you can't see with the music, the character who is commenting continuously on what's happening. It's also close to stand-up comedy in a funny sort of way, because you're reacting in the moment. And you'll come up with something funnier or better in the moment than you would do if you'd sat down and worked out what that was going to be. And that's when it's working at its best.
Is it a little bit like jazz in the sense that there's kind of no mistakes? If you make a mistake, then that goes into it and goes,
Play it again,
yeah.
And that's absolutely true. It's also a bit like jazz in that you're not trying to do variations over a classic piece of music, but you are trying to do variations over a piece of music you've come up with yourself. So you're trying to find ways of extending an idea. If your idea is a couple of chords or 3 or 4 notes, you then, if the film gives you time, you then take those 4 notes and you run with them, and you do lots of different things with them, and you go back to them when you need to. That's why I was very touched when Paolo said it sounded like a score, because that's always the ambition, is that people won't think he's sitting down there cooking this up as we go. They'll think, oh, this sounds prepared. I mean, I guess the biggest ambition is they think, we don't know he's there, it's coming out of the screen.
Yeah, that's another thing that I was thinking at one point. I sort of lose the night, because you're in the pit as well, so you're not visible. You're not part of the show in that
I
sense.
do shows where I'm right up on stage, and I'm the Laurel and Hardy shows I do, I'm sort of the presenter, the host of the thing as well, and I'm always in view. And it always delights me when people came up and said, we're really sorry, but we forgot you were there. And I said, well, actually, that's great. Bingo, job done.
Point,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yes, if they do notice me, probably for the wrong reasons. It's probably because I've done something wrong. Right.
Are there other filmmakers who are particularly, and films that you've noticed are particularly musical in their construction, that you sort of they gel with you, or you zip off them?
Most of the good ones are anyway.
Right.
Yesterday I was running the masterclass for piano players, and the 2 students we had, they do have to sit down and play bits of film without knowing what they're going to be playing, and they just start playing. But I do say to them, actually, the best directors, and this is the case right up until today, they signal their intentions if they want to signal them, but they certainly never leave you hanging as to what their intentions are. So with certainly all of the great directors, all the great Hollywood directors, British directors, European directors, they have such a sure hand with a story on the camera that you can relax as a musician, because there's nothing coming at you that you're not entirely expecting. And anything that does come at you that you kind of don't expect, you just have to be ready to be as fast as possible to take it on board. But it will all have a logic to it. The worst directors are the ones who throw logic out the window. So you suddenly get introduced to a character you're not in the least bit interested in. Or you then spend a whole scene with a character you're not in the least bit interested in. These are all things that directors get picked up on now. Why the hell? I was much more interested in this minor character than I was in this entire plot. And that's where you can sort of tell that a great director has already worked out the focus that they want the audience to have. So therefore they've worked out the focus, the silent directors have worked out the focus that the musicians need to have. And in terms of my kind of take on playing something you don't know particularly well, again, this is an explanation I made yesterday. But when you first start a film you've not seen, the fan of opportunities, that's sort of like the opening of a fan in front of you, it's absolutely as wide as it can go. Within the first 5 or 6 shots, that fan's already starting to close up, because you've already learned about character, you've learned what the story is, you've probably got some idea of what they want. You certainly know whereabouts they are in the world right now. And then within 10 minutes, your fan has probably closed to pretty much only, a very, very small amount of possibilities still there.
Genre as well comes into it.
Totally.
You've identified. Speaking of which, do you find it easier to accompany drama or comedy? Are there differences, or is it just different skill sets? But
there's not a lot of difference in terms of what I bring to the film, in terms of my kind of involvement with it. But as I get older, comedies get harder, because you've just got to keep playing so fast.
Right.
And particularly comedies which are just set up and then 20 minutes of the result of the setup. So you have only like a couple of minutes to set something up, and then it's like flat out for the rest.
Sherlock Jr. It'd be a classic example of that.
Well, Sherlock Jr. is so well made that you have lots of breathing space.
Yeah.
And he's very smart about that. He realises that his audience can't just keep laughing.
Attenzione ragazzi, chi apre un ombrellone?
Grazie. Wow. Okay.
Oh, that's better. Che sollievo.
Ah sì?
Thank you. But nowadays, I like getting my teeth into drama, but not drama that takes itself too seriously. I think, again, my attitudes have changed over the last 40 years. Over that, when I first started playing, particularly when I first started playing here, and I was trying to make my mark, I played every film as if it was a masterpiece.
Right.
Even when it wasn't. Often when it wasn't. Now, my tolerance level is way, way lower. So I don't often get films that I actually patently loathe while I'm playing them, but you can usually tell.
Really?
Yeah.
Really, there's a sort of... Okay, I'm counting time here. I'm hitting the beats, but I'm not. I'm phoning it in a little bit.
Music's a lie detector. If I'm playing what's coming straight out of me and I'm bored out of my mind, then that's what's going to be in the music.
Right.
Whereas you can also hear when I'm fired up by something, because the music just gets different. It goes off somewhere different. It goes off somewhere I wasn't planning.
Yeah.
And that's lovely.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely.
And we just saw a wonderful film, in the Italian series about the actress who I didn't know before this at all. She was in a film yesterday with the Gypsies as well, which was super. And you said you enjoyed, playing for that.
The fact that it was taking the piss out of itself.
Yeah.
But also being Italian and being a diva picture, it meant that I could be quite big and florid.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You were playing sort of parodically as well at times.
Absolutely.
This is a pastiche.
That was absolutely intentional.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see what you might call, I suppose, a high-end comedy, a comedy made with wealthy artistic people rather than blue-collar working class people being kicked up the arse. I think also, though it had its problems, I got fed up with the fact that we were showing people laughing so much. And that became quite hard to accompany.
Right.
Because after a while, there's... The words that come into your head that are the ones you want to hear least are, yeah, we get it, move on.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's 2025 speaking, not 1909 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not really fair. But the problem is now I'm a crotchety old middle-aged piano player, so I'm not going to be putting up too much with self-indulgence. And there are plenty of films that are self-indulgent, and they're way more than just Italian. That's for sure. There's plenty of Hollywood product that is self-indulgent. I I have almost no time whatsoever for Abel Gance, and I know that gets me kicked straight out of the Art Cinema Appreciation Society.
The director of the longest...
Of Napoleon and,
yeah.
So many others. And I just find after a while it's self-regarding bollocks.
I know our mutual friend Pamela Hutchinson feels similarly about this. And has expressed it with similar directness.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Pordenone, the film festival itself. You've been coming here for a long time. What's your experience and background with the festival?
It's really interesting because when I first came, I think I was the first foreign pianist they hired. Before that, they had one guy who was Italian, and played every film every day. I was brought in for a season called Primo di Caligari, and the reason was that the Pordenone folk had been in London when I played Caligari at the National Film Theatre and liked it and said, will you come and play it for us? And initially, the pianists, as others started to arrive as well, were kind of greeted very warmly by some of the audience, kind of treated as a necessary evil by others in the audience, and downright disliked by an element of the audience that sort of felt that the music was going to poison the innocence and the authenticity of the original material.
But they'd always had musical accompaniment.
They had, but when it started to be about the music, it became a problem.
I see.
I remember somebody saying to David Robinson, David Robinson overheard somebody saying, what's this English obsession with the music for silent film? This was only it's only like 1985, 86, something like that, when I first went. So I found, once David Robinson had become director of the festival, he basically told all of us musicians, and by that time there were about 6 or 7 of us from different countries around the world. He said, I am going to make sure that you all get credited. I'm going to oversee which films you get to play so that everybody's playing to their strength. He basically raised the game for us musicians. And suddenly, people who when I was coming here for 15 years, people who wouldn't give me the time of day were at least saying hello in the breakfast room.
Right.
And that was a big sort of move in the right direction. I have to say, one real big breakthrough here when we suddenly found ourselves surrounded by senior academics and collectors was when the Australian and New Zealand archives came, and they were almost all really enthusiastic young girls, and they all loved the musicians, and they came and hung out with us. So suddenly we found that a whole load of people who normally wouldn't take any notice of the musicians was buzzing around us like flies, and we got more accepted. Now, with things like the master classes that run here for piano players, and I think also a much more raised expectation for the audience that they're going to get something good. That's probably only a 15 or 20-year-old situation.
Wow.
And it took 10 or 15 years to get there. Before that, the music was just there to make sure that you couldn't hear everybody else coughing, sneezing, etc.
I feel like now when the accompaniment credit comes up at the beginning of a screening, you know, the applause is very much for the musician. It's like, good, it's so-and-so. They do a great...
Absolutely.
Not so-and-so, Neil Brand. That's what...
It is for everybody.
Or Steve Horn, or...
We get very, very well received these days. It's a very rewarding job to do because people do kind of... They know how important it is. And in fact, I was talking to someone whose PhD within the archiving world now is performance of films and how you deal with musicians. And that's something that's taken a long while to sort of get anywhere. Because for many years, for obvious reasons, when an archive has got a new restoration, they've commissioned a score, it's normally commissioned by people who don't know much about music and don't know anything about how to score a silent film. So they'll hand it over lock, stock and barrel to somebody who also may not know how to score a silent film. They might be the most eminent composer in the concert hall you could possibly have, but then being able to understand the dramaturgy of silent film, that's a whole different skill set, and it's one you have to have as a film composer. It's certainly one you have to have as a silent film accompanist. You've got to know drama. You've got to know what subtext is. You've got to see who's in control of a scene, even if nobody's saying anything. You know, that all comes with the job.
What do you think of like when silent film gets scores or is accompanied by, say, musicians or groups who are coming from totally different areas of, like, I'm thinking of the German group in the nursery, for instance, or not OK Computer, Radiohead, I think have recently done.
Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah, exactly. What's the?
If it serves the film, great.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem at all with sort of musical genres, what being used to accompany a film. I sat through an awful lot very early on, thankfully less so now, of accompaniments which were basically the band getting off on playing while the film happened to be playing behind them.
Right, like Pink Floyd, sort of almost.
Almost. You know, they're supposed to be accompanying the film, and actually the music would chunter on, and the film would be going through God knows what in the way of different emotions and scenes and so forth, and the music didn't recognise any of it. That happens much less often now, thank God. But there were times when, as soon as you knew somebody was doing a film who'd not done a silent film before, part of you sort of thought, what did you think your job was? You know, it's not just there to provide wallpaper. You are actually there to write music or play music that comments on the film.
Yeah, you have to understand it's like
basic.
Exactly, it's like a space in an art gallery rather than, as you say, painting the wall of a house.
Yeah, you know. And those I've always had problems with, and particularly where they've been done by very high, well-paid, well-known musicians who seriously ought to know better.
Right.
That does get my goat, but as I say, it happens much less now. And I think things like the Pet Shop Boys, Battleship Potemkin is brilliant. Right. Because not only does it work, but it brings an entire audience to silent film that wouldn't be there otherwise.
That was my next question, actually, in terms of, like, lots of people may be listening to this because now I've turned it into a podcast interview.
I gathered that.
Lots of people will listen to this who maybe never seen silent film or maybe seen one or two.
Yeah.
What would you suggest they sort of weigh in?
Well, first of all, find one happening.
Yeah.
It's still
preferably live, preferably in a...
It's still quite hard to find live silent film unless you're in a big town where there's art house cinema. But you could do worse, to be frank. At this stage, watching something really good on TV that's been well scored. But I think it was kind of proven quite a long time ago, the problem with silent cinema on TV is that because you haven't got the live music, it just feels like a sound film that doesn't happen to have any dialogue.
Right.
And that's not a silent film. A silent film is actually intended to be a theatrical presentation.
Yeah.
It was made that way, it was seen that way. So sticking it on TV, it's the equivalent of taking a classic roadster and only ever running it around one little track.
Right.
It was intended to go through Europe. Somebody did back in the 20s. Only now you're just watching it putter around 800-metre track, and that's the difference. The really good silent films work 100 times better live than they do on TV. Yeah. But it's a start. You can see stuff that will still blow you away on television. And I don't think there's any film I would recommend they see as an entry level on silent film.
You've got to find it yourself. It's like film generally. If you don't find something that excites you, it's difficult to.
Yeah, and I think also what I've seen in my time is exponentially larger amounts of silent film being available, more people projecting it, more people going to see it, much more acceptance of it as cinema. Because when I first started, there was no two ways about it. Cinema started in 1928.
Right.
And anything before that was museum piece and not really worth it. And I began in 84. Napoleon had been 81. I think the Thames TV series had been around 1981. So Kevin and David were the
This
first.
is a Kevin Brownlow.
Yeah, David Gill. They were the first to take it seriously and make everybody else take it seriously. So I was able to ride a very new wave there. And I've seen it now get to the stage where silent movies are, within festival, tend to be more mainstream. People will go and see them, they like them. The new restorations are exciting. It's as exciting that a restoration of a major silent comes out as a new film by Scorsese. You know?
Yeah.
It's an event. People want to see it. It does slightly break my heart that this year, for instance, I don't think the LFF has got any archive showings at all.
Oh no! What are they doing? What are they thinking?
Well, they're thinking they don't want to show archive film.
Right. Because I don't know. Bologna, Cinema
Ritrovato entirely.
It's amazing.
Same with here. Most festivals have
Cannes will
a
show
silent element.
amazing.
And, you know, even if something like the LFF, it's only once a year, so they can cherry pick the new restorations. You know, there's fantastic stuff could just be dropped into that audience. And to be frank, the archive work that Bryony does on Sunday afternoons at the NFT always sells really, really well.
Right. There's an audience for it.
Yeah, there is. There's an audience for this stuff. And it's not the same audience. It's an audience that is a much broader demographic than when I first started out. So yeah, I think it's a good things are happening. And silent cinema as a kind of mainstream entertainment is broadening out more and more, which is what I wanted to see. I don't want to see it as specialist. In spite of all the problems.
Yeah.
I mean, I think long ago I coined the phrase silent movies break your heart, because they do. Because at the time it was hard to get an audience for a silent film. It was hard to put on a silent film. You had to have cans and cans of film. You had to make sure it got to the right place. It had to be put together by projectionists who weren't used to silent film, so quite often put it through back to front. It was always hassle. Now it's not, because digital has made really fantastic looking material available very easily and very simply and unchanged from delivery to reception. And that's wonderful for someone like me, because the chances of a show being ruined because something's gone wrong with the projection are pretty small. Still happens.
Yeah, but it's no longer, there are no longer so many factors outside of your control.
No.
And that's I mean, I there was one snafu which unfortunately didn't affect me for the Fritz Lang film,
right?
Where they didn't have the English subs. But most people had seen it so many times that they just sat and watched it anyway. You know, I had never seen it, so that was a big first for me, and I was okay because I could understand the Italian subs, so that was fine for me.
But there was a very tiny snafu this morning.
Oh,
which was that I wasn't supposed to be playing the short that came on after my film.
Ah, really?
That
okay,
was
so
a
that
complete
was
surprise.
okay.
But as soon as it was there, it's like, all right, I better stick with this. Then musicians for the next one were starting to come in.
Yeah.
And I kind of went,
off you go.
So what they'd done was they'd taken the short before the one these guys were supposed to play and stuck it on the end of my program.
Ah,
but
okay.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
So,
it's a pure improvisation in that case, and
and what you would have heard in the music is I have no idea what this film's about.
I definitely didn't notice that it was a snafu at all.
No.
So last question then. Looking to today, and obviously your interests lie outside of silent movies. Your interest is also in present day film music, all film music. What do you look around and you see that's exciting in film music at the moment that you?
Oh, all sorts. I think.
Yeah. See how I didn't Ridley Scott it?
Very good. I think in the last certainly the last generation, or this generation of film composers are very, very good indeed. And I say that because most of them are cinephile and have learned from the greats. So, although you won't hear Jerry Goldsmith in a Desplat score, you can tell what Desplat was growing up listening to. And to have a kind of broad ability with genre, which is what almost every good film composer has got now, is lovely. What I think still needs to change, and hasn't changed in all the time I've been working and all the time I've been going to the cinema and hearing film music, is that the producers are still too terrified to let a composer really off the leash. There's still a kind of editorial control, a conservative editorial control over a lot of film music, and you can tell.
Does that mean like a chase scene has got to sound a bit like this, and if somebody's programming a computer, it's got to be a bit ticky-tocky sound? And
it's that thing. The difference between a good film composer and a producer is that a good film composer will come up with something fresh.
Yeah, precisely.
Whereas a producer will go, no, I want something that sounds exactly like Mission Impossible 6.
Yeah.
And which I get, I understand it. But it's surprising how within the industry there is still a kind of sense that the music is the final, lowest level servant of the movie. Way behind special effects, way behind script even though script's not the top by any means.
Yeah. Preach.
Yeah. But the way that the music is dealt with within the industry is still, I think, pretty poor. Whereas the way the music is received by a broad by a broad world public is massive, because more and more and more people are getting into film music. And there's now, I think, a real sort of headwind that requires really good music for film that can straight away go to audio, so it can't just chunter away in the background. It's got to have spice to it that makes it worth sitting down and listening to in isolation from the film. And that's again as a result of digital. It's a result of the music being much, much more accessible than it used to be. And I think that's great. And I still have trouble selling the idea of film music as anything other than niche, certainly where the BBC is.
Really?
They still see it as niche.
I find whenever they sum up my years listening, it's always like from soundtrack albums. It's my go to and not. I mean, okay, I'm into film, so obviously. But I listen to it separate from films as well, for pure pleasure. So it surprises me that it's niche, because some of these names that we have these days. Well, Hans Zimmer going around and doing concerts, for instance. He's a pop star, surely. He's a rock star as much as he is a composer.
Yeah, and in London in March we had the Soundtrack Festival, the first time there's been a London Soundtrack Festival, and that was lots of live stuff as well. That it doesn't make any sense at all, except that cultural institutions, including the BBC, are kind of, for some reason or other, they are reducing their engagement with culture to absolutely mainstream, and they've dictated that mainstream. And film music's not in that mainstream.
I mean, mainstream always has the idea for me of being quite a big river, and it's not. It's the word stream is coming back to bite us, because I remember when I first got into film, there was a movie quiz on children's television.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Screen test.
Exactly.
I was an avid watcher.
Exactly. And so that's what gets you. And there was a behind-the-scenes show on children's, devoted to children's television.
Right.
So film, which you would have thought 30, 40 years ago would have been considered, this is a modern thing and it's not culturally important. The Reefian idea of the BBC might have rejected, was actually fully included in program scheduling for children.
Yeah,
You know.
totally. And I was one of the beneficiaries of that. I can remember, I think one of the most exciting things I saw when I was young was a behind the scenes of, I would imagine, either Goldfinger or Diamonds Are Forever, in which they showed a stunt with a car being blown up and running off the road. And it was so beautifully shot as a piece of documentary as to how they were doing this stuff. And the driver had to throw himself out the side of the car because obviously the car was going to go over a cliff and explode. It was really interesting, and that was the first time I'd seen behind the curtain, and I just remember thinking, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and around the same time, I saw for the first time, still to me, one of the most exciting bits of TV footage, which is Malcolm Arnold with an orchestra and people doing sound effects, recreating one of the music cues for Hobson's Choice. And it's the music when right at the beginning when you're running across the line of shoes that are in the shoe shop, and he gives a theme to each of them. There's a pair of riding boots and a pair of ballet shoes.
So they each have a leitmotif.
And they've got a little leitmotif, and there he is on screen as he gets, and he's conducting the picture. You know, and as he gets there, it's like, you come in there, and that's it. And again, I just thought, oh wow, that's amazing. And at the time, that seemed supernaturally clever.
Yeah.
Now I get it. Now I know how he did it. But at the time,
but even that must just feel like you've just become a superhero in doing that. You're now the man.
But like you say, to see that at a very formative age, you know, all that it only takes something like that to create a director or a writer or a composer.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Okay, so film book recommendation.
Film book recommendation. Well, you've probably had this many times before, but I do think, and I'm going to get his name wrong now, but the Hitchcock biography by Patrick McGilligan is an absolute must-read, and so is Laurel and Hardy, The Roots of Comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that was my Bible for years.
Right.
I wrote a play about Stan Laurel off the back of reading that book.
I was born in the same town as Stan Laurel, Ulverston.
There you go. Well, it's Simon Luvish, as I remember rightly, wrote the book.
That's right, yes.
And I've been doing a tour of Laurel and Hardy. I'm a huge Laurel and Hardy fan, and their comedy is always fascinating. And that book opened up all sorts, but it specifically gave me the background for the play that I wrote, which it mentioned that when Hardy was in his last days, he'd had his stroke, he couldn't speak, he could only wave one arm, kind of thing. And Stan would go around and see him and sit with him. And as Luvish put it, the only way they could communicate with each other was as they communicated in silent film, which was gesture. And I thought, wow, knowing Stan would have had stuff he wanted to say to his old partner that he hadn't said up until then.
Right.
So I wrote a play about it.
That's such a wonderful story. And again, you know, talking about children's television, I remember watching the Stan Laurel. They were usually compilation films of the silents and the shorts, and also you'd have Harold Lloyd, again compilations and things. But you were exposed to it, and so later when I came to watch them sort of fully, I was already very familiar with the grammar, with the imagination, and they weren't strangers. They were very familiar. They were, kids love
absolutely
this stuff.
And you got them unmediated, so they were just part of your TV day.
Yeah, part of the diet.
So you just kind of, if you liked them, you looked at, you watched them, and you fell about laughing. If you didn't like them, fine. But I can remember how certain things were a high point of a TV watching time, and the biggest I can remember was Tom and Jerry.
Oh,
when
yeah.
Tom and Jerry hit just before the news, 5:45, you just knew you were in for an absolutely high time for 5 or 10 minutes. And these were probably the earlier ones, certainly before they got to the Hanna-Barbera years. And my dad had the loudest laugh. He didn't laugh often, but when he did, he brought the roof down. And he would just be helpless at Tom and Jerry. And the whole family rocking with laughter. I mainly remember that from Tom and Jerry.
Yeah. And Tom and Jerry also sort of gave, didn't they give a sort of a name to a musical criticism? If Dr. No has a bit where Sean Connery beats a spider to death with a shoe, and the orchestra follows his every beat.
Yeah. No, they're astonishingly complex scores. Those Scott Bradley scores.
Yeah.
And if you break down what he's doing with the musicians, because they're the same musicians that were earlier on in the day sitting down playing all the cues for Singing in the Rain or American in Paris, but they're playing way more complex and difficult music for Tom and Jerry way faster.
Right.
Because the music is Mickey Mousing, as you put it.
Exactly.
It's hitting exact moments. So none of the cues are more than about a minute, if that. And then you hear a natural break in the music, and that's the point at which they've finished the cues and they've got set up for the next one. But the musicianship of those guys, if you watch Tom and Jerry and even just close your eyes for a little while, you will hear Shostakovich and then some. And
that's so
phenomenally played.
Yeah. It's like Muscle Shoals or something for film music. The unsung heroes of film music. Yeah. Oh, well, it's been wonderful talking to you, Neil.
And you, John.
Thanks. That was great.